Hello, everybody. I decided to give you my face, right? Figure I'll leave that in the corner and bug you with it and look like you're really in class. And this is the big whiteboard behind us. And I think if you like it, we'll stay with it. And you'll see that I got a Corona cut haircut. Did it with a number 4 blade and a razor blade. And I'll never pay for a haircut again because I did it and it don't look bad. And I paid for haircuts that look like this before. So that's never going to happen again. But next time, maybe I'll get a mohawk. Maybe I'll get a spike sticking out in front of my head. I don't know. We'll see what happens. Anyway, so I decided today we're going to kind of merge along that diagnostic theme, right? What do we do with? And I'm going to import some of this stuff into the truck that's outside. Just so you know, that truck with the melted fuse box, I have a new fuse box or used fuse box coming tomorrow. And I'm going to replace the fuse box. I'll take some pictures and I'll bring you into that world too after I do that. All right, but for today, let's talk about what happens if a car doesn't start, right? So if a car doesn't start, what do we need? We need to have fuel pressure. We need to have fuel getting into the motor. We need to have spark. We need to have air. We need to have compression. We need to have battery, right? So let's talk about the things that could be a no start, right? A no start can be no crank, right? So we turn the key, nothing happens. Now we know we're looking into the starting cranking system, right? The battery, the starter, the alternator, things, along that side, ignition switch, that type of stuff. So let's look at a couple things around that line, right? So if we sit down and let's say we turn the key, we got nothing. Well, let's go look at diagrams. Let's look at electrical diagrams. Now you notice we have this interactive non-OE versus this electrical OE. So they give you some interesting things. So let's see what we got when we go into here. Right, so we'll go into starting and charging. Well, we're going to start with, let's say, starting circuit, right? Let's stay with that because we got a car that doesn't crank at all. So let's see where that puts us. Thinking. Okay, so we got some stuff here. I'm going to open this in a new, open image in a new tab so we can have that thing all up here. Just like this. And let's go away from that because that is not big enough. Right, so we can zoom. So if we zoom, we start out with that guy right there, right? So what should we have here? We have ground and we have power. What kind of voltage should we have here? Well, we better have at least, right? What do we know about battery voltage? How much is full? Well, we should have a fully charged battery, 12.6 volts, right? A 12-volt battery is 75% depleted. It's a 25% charged battery. So if we're looking at this and we check it with a meter across this and we see we have 12 volts, well, we know that battery is mostly depleted. It still should be enough to activate the starter to some degree, right? So we have a car, you turn the key, it cranks, it doesn't start. So what we want to do is we want to take a meter, connect it to ground onto that battery side and crank it, right? When that starter solenoid activates and that starter draws that battery voltage is going to drop like a stone. When we talk about checking, load testing a battery, right? We check to see what it's capable of doing. And a load test on a battery cannot drop below 9.6 volts, right? That's the lowest. So if we hook a meter up to that positive battery cable and the black lead to ground and we crank the engine and that battery voltage drops down to 8 volts, well, now we know we got a battery problem. right? We can have two things. We can have a starter, right, that's drawing too much power and killing that battery, but our battery was not necessarily at 12.6 when we started. So we know that something's not quite right there. But once we see it nosedive below 9.6 volts, now we know we have to go and check that battery, right? So now we're going to do our battery tests. If we do our capacitance battery test, it's going to really tax that battery, and we're going to see how it's going to respond the same as that starter did. If we do one of those conductance tests, right, those little small ones that we just hook up and we operate, like the Midtronics unit, well, that gives us the actual potential of that battery to charge, right? It looks inside the battery and it finds out where we have charging capabilities within the plates of a battery. So we do that, we know straight away that battery's worth charging or not worth charging. So now we look at it, we see it's a good battery but low on charge. So now we charge that battery and bring it up to full amount where it tells us it's good. And now we do it again. So we turn the key, we sit down, and we hear the starter kick in. Now the starter kicks in, we can see our battery voltage stays above 9.6. Now the starter kicks in and the engine cranks over. Nothing. So now what? Now there's a few things we have to look at. So let's drag this down. We can see that our battery goes to our starter. We can see up here, here's our starter motor relay. If we look over here, here's our ignition switch. Right, so that thing cranking now, what do we know? We know that we have the battery power coming into this ignition C fuse. That comes down, goes into our ignition switch. Our switch turns to start. Comes through the crank fuse, right? So now you look at all these things. If that starter did not operate, it could be that fuse. It could be that fuse. It could be that fusible link, right? So if you have a starter that doesn't crank, now you're chasing down those things, and you can go using ALLDATA and find those locations for those components.